So we had left with homework. The homework was to notice if you saw anything related to the gun issue. We had one bumper sticker.
Yeah, that's how.
She drove out of here and says the back end of a truck, or I don't know, car.
Yeah, it was on a truck.
It was a truck. I'm sorry, I was stereotyping here. So,
But yeah, well, I see, like, other ones I see a lot are like the Confederate flag, and I know that there's like a lot of, there's been controversy with that too.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not, I don't care.
Yeah.
What was the bumper sticker that you saw? I didn't.
It said, gun-free safe zones. It said providing helpless targets for mass murders since 1991.
That's sticky.
Yeah.
That's nice and sticky. Yeah, see.
You
Oh,
can
it's
kick out of it,
so
honestly.
I know it. Somebody had posted that. I already-
Yes. I'll just go down the
So
line.
I read an article online,
Hey.
and it was written, and actually, this weekend was the 5-year anniversary of the shootings in Aurora, Colorado, when the midnight showing of Batman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was the 5-year anniversary. So it was written by one of the victims' mothers.
Okay. And what showed up inside of it?
I was really sad.
Sad.
Yeah.
And so was there an urge to do a toward? Or a
So I
waiver?
cried a little.
So was it
I guess that's a way.
A way.
Right, to
Right.
relieve.
a sort of the sadness over here and a little bit of a cry? Yes.
Something I saw on Facebook made me think of the
Facebook.
Australia thing.
Right.
I did a whole bunch of research
What showed up inside of you?
that I wanted to learn more.
So curiosity showed up.
And from that, I think it was a toward move because it made me go actually find research.
So you read
Things I thought I knew, but I wanted to be sure that I didn't sit in this group and rattle off something that I couldn't back out.
Okay, so that
I didn't want to
was
advertise to. And the other was the Second Amendment we talked about.
okay. What do you see on that? Where was it? Your 5 cents.
That's on Facebook every day.
Really?
Facebook, Twitter, anything you go, there's always Second Amendment mentioned in there somewhere about gun rights, which is obviously the Second Amendment.
I'll put since you don't have it, I'll put Twitter. A very popular topic these
But the
days.
curiosity of that fact was just, I went in, I already knew what the Second Amendment was. I worked in the firearms industry for 20 plus years, so I knew what the Second Amendment was. But the curiosity fact that a lot of people don't know is the Maine Constitution also has its own version, and it's much clearer, and it's very simple, and I even have a copy of it with me. Never go with it. But the Maine Constitution, Article 1,
You can see that.
Section 16 says every citizen has a right to keep and bear arms, and this right shall never be questioned. Doesn't mention militia, doesn't mention well-regulated militia, it only mentions the
We
fact
took all that
that the
out.
right
So
to
when
keep
you
and bear
read
arms.
about that, what showed up inside of you?
Knowing I was right on that subject.
Now what's that?
Confirmation.
What's that?
Confirmation.
Confirmation of beliefs.
Thank you. And so with confirmation showing up, did you have the urge to do a toward or a waiver?
Oh, absolutely, toward.
Toward! And so that was like, where is it? There it is. So there we go, a little arrow out that way. We have, this way, okay.
Well, I have
Steve?
one from the senses of hearing
Hearing,
from another individual. So I noticed the part about militarization of the police.
Yes.
So she had mentioned that last week too. And I didn't say anything because of the discussion, but then she had just said it. So now that mulled up inside of me that I need to push back.
and so does that lean you toward or away?
I'm opposite on her. It doesn't frighten me. It actually is comforting to me because
Oh, that's comfort. Now that I can do.
Well, for me, the word that's even more, besides disturbing, I wish you'd add, would be the word frightening.
right. So when I see her say, well, it's frightening or scary because they're they're becoming militarized.
But-
They didn't use,
but-
they have
many
never
of them-
used a tank on the general public.
I've been to
They
many
actually
of
do.
these since I was 13 years old, starting with my father. So I know, I've been to physically many of these. And
Okay.
especially in the early
So
90s.
when
or
you
late
see
80s, they
militarized
started-
police,
after
Frighten
this
shows
Vietnam
up.
War.
And when he sees militarized police or hears about it, Comfort shows up.
It's amazing.
Two totally different responses.
They have never gone after me, only because I never went after them. But if I
That would be a
if
really
I
good
charged to them with,
recommendation.
if I charged to them with a weapon, they would respond to me an appropriate level of force. And so if I go at them with an AK-47 and they're still held by revolvers, not even a magazine-fed gun, or only 10 shots, that police officer is in a life-threatening situation because he can't respond force for force.
Then you start looking at their response to their five senses response.
I don't think people would argue that if there was a group of people that were throwing Molotov cocktails or have guns themselves, that we wouldn't want the police fully armed and militarized.
Which
the
protest
problem
doesn't
is,
lead to that,
hold on one
anyways.
second. The problem is that when there's a protest that isn't necessarily going to go there, the police come and kind of up the ante, and it rises tensions. People get stressed, and it
Okay.
starts to build because I
True,
think.
but it's the only way to
And then hold on one
subside.
second.
But let's matricize what she just said. So let's say it's a bunch of, I don't know, some breast cancer awareness march or something. I don't know.
Okay.
You get the idea, but it's
Right.
it's something like that. And when the people show up, they see, police in riot gear.
Yep.
Is what they see up here.
we are not.
So then what shows up inside of them?
Right.
Is what she's asking. What shows up inside of the people when they see that? Not that anything has happened, nothing. It's just what's their
100% of the people
response.
out there are not after the police, but a percentage are. And if them
It's a
police
very
go
small
unprepared to that crowd,
Very
they're
small.
gonna get hurt.
Oh,
So at what point is it fair
understood.
He's
for
not-
somebody's husband not to come home?
Right,
because of the
understood.
peaceful protest?
However, to the regular person that's in the crowd, some of them at least, will see the police in riot gear, and they will have. What we've seen today is that different people in the same crowd will have an entirely different response to the same five senses experience.
Well, let's
That's
bring
the
a
point.
parallel issue. How many people feel the same way because they go to an airport and see an automatic weapon on an officer at the airport?
Oh, I've seen that.
Right, but the same
Oh, it's the same
the
thing.
same
Right,
feeling
right.
should be amongst them other people that say, oh no, he's got an automatic weapon at the airport. There's nobody here that you need to shoot with an automatic weapon and stuff. So then same feeling should arise, but I would think that they would be like, oh, well, they're there to protect us against the terrorists. So now they're helping me, but when I was at the protest, they were against me. And I really think that if you're going to take a stance on others protecting you or overseeing you, that you should be consistent with the views.
Well, the problem is with humans, they'll always take something like this and have different responses to it. That's humans. That's just
Oh, it's
humans.
human nature, there's no question.
Right,
It's human nature to
you're
do
to have a
that.
different response.
But, like Steve is saying, I don't think in this country, in recent memory, that the police have ever, they may be showing up in riot gear, maybe some people get nervous about that, etc. But I don't think they've ever fired first. Ever. There's always been
They've
something.
never mowed down the crowd with automatic weapons or dragged
Anyway.
off 30 people and laid them his body
The
back.
last time that happened was
In
Kent
the
State.
state of Maine, you mean?
The point is not that they're going to that level. The point is that they're showing up in that gear, that they're now turning what was something that was designed to be peaceful. Now people feel tense. Their fears are elevated. It doesn't need to be that they mow down. Listen, I think that it just doesn't need to be 100%. It doesn't need to be like 100% riot gear or no riot gear. And I'm the first to say that it's always, hindsight is always 20/20, right? We can always look back and say, this is what they should have done. This is what, the police should have done or that the victim should have done. But I guess my point is that just showing up with that type of response to a protest is disconcerting to people. And it causes people, I think, to act in certain ways that they may not have acted.
So that's when they start burning police cars and flipping them over.
Yeah, well, let's just look at humans. Bear with me, I'm a psychologist, so must bear with me a little bit. But I'm going to show you exactly what happens with folks. So something shows up in their five senses experience, like, I'll just put riot gear. Because I would say, more than likely, that if you take a bunch of people and put like blood pressure monitors and stuff on them, and you just flash a picture of riot gear, no human in it, just riot gear, I, in an experimental situation, can see a change in their physiological response. So you'll see it, and so that gets down here into this mental response. And with many people, that mental response is going to be, folks have probably heard about it. Have you ever heard of the fight or flight response? Yeah. That's what's going to be triggered. It's called the amygdala brain or whatever. So you're going to have the fight or flight response. And what almost always happens when a fight or flight response is triggered in somebody? Away or toward move?
Away.
That's an away move. It's a massive away because it keeps you alive. That's what has kept humans alive. We're very good at it. And we're very good at anticipating danger. That's another thing. We're good at figuring out it might be dangerous. And so therefore we're good at avoiding danger, which has kept us alive for many years. And so you'll tend to get this away response. Whatever it is, it's called the avoidance response. And so that's what you're dealing with. That's just what all of you are talking about, is that basic thing. And then how humans go about dealing with it.
There's thousands of people. There's people that are getting agitated at normal police without riot gear, and they're starting to push the limits, and then they call in other teams. And then,
No. I'm just pointing out the psychological response that leads to that. That's all. It's going to lead to it 100% of the time.
Well,
You bet he's had his hand.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yes.
Tom, and then I would do.
well, I was just thinking about
Because
a
he
trigger
has no
for me
knowledge,
was the
he's never there.
conversation that we had before about the words gun control, I think you brought up, and then my response. So, and I was saying that gun for me was one that prompted concern. And I had a discussion about it since then with somebody that brought to my mind what I noticed was that I was afraid about guns. And I realized that my fear of seeing somebody with a gun is probably equal to the fear that causes somebody to carry a gun. And I noticed that it's my choice to either be afraid or not now, because the other part was somebody was concerned about the idea of control. So freedom versus potential for death, but it just seems to me that fear is fear no matter what. And that when you decide you're going to be afraid and you act on that, you decrease the amount of freedom you have for yourself. And I realized, yeah, I'm the same as a person who carries a gun if I don't want to have a gun because I'm afraid. And what do I do about my fears? More my issue, what I do about my fear, do I decide to be free or not? And I realized that wanting to control somebody's ability to have a gun is equal to their wanting to have a gun.
Right.
So
You're saying scary something up here. Notice I've neutralized it.
Once I notice that I have the fear, I can make the decision not to be afraid. What do I do about my fear? So that I neither control somebody's ability to have a gun, nor do I carry a gun. It's just
Okay.
to live without fear.
So what you're saying, as we slow this down, you say, I notice the fear showing up.
Right.
So there, I've just done a different response.
Right.
I've noticed the fear showing up. And so now I have a choice. And my choice is
To deal with my own fear.
and which is either could be inside yourself, just keep it in, or you could go
Well,
take a run.
I
or
know it
something.
definitely means that I've always felt like I wasn't so fearful I wanted to carry a gun, but now it's made me think, well, maybe I don't want to control somebody's ability to have a gun.
Fear is fear. It's the response to fear is really what compensation.
Well, if you wear your seatbelts, does that mean you're fearful?
Yes!
In a sense, you carry a gun, you're fearful in a sense that if somebody approaches you, you are now helpless because you didn't have
That's all
something to
right.
respond. But we don't run around making fun of people that don't wear seatbelts as being crazy or we.
For me, who has been a peace activist and other issues I'm concerned about, for many years. I'm 74 now. I started with my father when I was 13. But back then, they were bringing militarized police from other big cities to line up. And they were ready to, and these were all peacefully done. Sometimes there are anarchists that get in there, but the peace movement itself, and I'm using it as an umbrella, is not that way at all. We're peaceful. We want peace. We don't want violence. We're oftentimes, many people are conscientious objectors. So my feeling, I'm so afraid of the police, I don't trust them. And if I had a major problem, they would be the last people I call because I would be extremely fearful that I would be the one that gets shot.
They're there to protect the good people, not to hurt the
But
good
they're not
But
there to
that's
protect
not-
the
If it's
good people.
intimidating, it's
Otherwise they
intimidating.
wouldn't be
If-
dying.
But her point is that there's been a record of police shootings.
I understand.
And
She's upset about it. It makes her
Right.
uneasy. I can
And
see her
she
point.
feels she is concerned about those police shootings and shooting innocent people. So she is afraid that
if
she
there was a
could-
police officer militarized in Aurora at the movie theater, everybody would have crabbed out about, oh, there's a cop in the movie theater, but guess who would have took that guy out in a heartbeat? The guy that was the sheepdog of everybody in that room. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain because somebody picks up a gun and goes into a gun-free zone and shoots up everybody and there's nobody there to defend everybody and then complain because it didn't happen and then turn around and say, I don't like them guys, they're here because they make me feel uneasy. We would never get away with putting armed guards with automatic weapons inside of movie theaters, but had there been one there, or even somebody with a service weapon, they could have got at that guy even though he had armor on. And when there's nobody to protect somebody, it becomes a big issue. When there's nobody in a school to protect anybody, it's a big issue. People can get their
But
hands
many
on their
innocent
guns
people
illegally.
are dying, people that are victims.
Let me just say this,
Uh-huh.
okay? This whole conversation is very disturbing and my adrenaline's going and I'm uncomfortable and I'm sad and angry and I'm also really pissed off. So here we go. Two things that came up which I want to discuss is Australia.
Oh, another
And-
Australia,
yeah,
okay.
Second Amendment rights, because, Tom, you can find statistics to prove your point of view, and I can find
Oh,
statistics.
absolutely.
So I'm just saying, I've done a lot of research too. And what I've discovered is the countries that have the most, I don't know, strictest isn't, but let's say the most progressive gun laws are the ones with the least violence, the least suicide, blah, 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 okay? So you can find them, and so can I. We can disagree on that.
Yes.
All right? Now, Australia, on the list of countries, is probably 4th or 5th in violence with guns, okay? United States is first. Down at the bottom are like Japan, UK, Iceland, which you would kind of expect, Canada. They all have stricter laws, okay? Now, as far as the Second Amendment, I did a lot of research on this as well because I don't really understand it. So what I discovered is you said everyone has a right to bear arms. That's correct. But the Supreme Court also has said that doesn't mean you can't regulate them. An example would be a background check. I don't understand why a responsible gun owner would object to that. If you're not a domestic abuser, you're not a felon, you're not mentally ill, etc., why is that invasive? The other piece is that law, the Second Amendment, was like 1791. That was a reaction to a militia of an oppressive government. So in some ways, it doesn't apply to today.
That's right.
So I think we can agree to disagree. If somebody is responsible, they take care of their weapons, they don't do bad things, I don't have a problem. But it's the other people, the dangerous people, we have to do something about that.
Well, on the surface, you're right.
You need to let me
Everybody should
finish,
okay.
okay? I heard what you had to say. The other thing I would say is you talked about coming in here with a weapon and not being able to carry. If you walked in this room with a gun, I'd be terrified. I don't know you. And you have a right to be safe, but so do I. So we can agree to disagree. I don't think you're a crazy guy, and I don't think I need to fear you, but that would be my first reaction.
There's a lot of ways to kill somebody too. If somebody's gonna
Well, that's
kill you,
not what
they're
I'm
gonna kill
talking
you.
about.
Not now, but, during the last week, what showed up inside of you?
It was a towards move because I felt like I was getting educated.
And with the beginnings of it, it's just like, Tom, right? You
I did a
researched
lot of
more.
research.
Did more research.
Yeah.
So more,
And I've also joined an organization that is involved with a lot of this, so I have some information. So I've been active.
more
But
research.
also, my initial reaction is run away from all this. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to think about it. It's too hard.
Well, and that's sort of why I put up the fear response. Because literally, it doesn't matter which you hook up to the apparatus. You show them a scary thing, boom, they do the fight. It's called fight, flight, or freeze response.
And what Tom said, I never thought about it before. You're afraid, so you don't want a gun, but you're also afraid, so
and you
you
do
might
want
want
a
it.
gun.
I never thought of it that way. And the freedom to choose really is, to me, what's
Well,
pretty important.
I've thought about people at work, when somebody has a gun and they go in and shoot people at work. And where I work, we are a community TV station, we are different people's points of view. And I have been confronted by people who scared me.
Yeah.
And I have sat at my desk and thought, what would I do if I started hearing gunshots? And I realized, if I believe in what I'm doing, that's probably the way I should die. I mean, I want to live free. And to me, you have to deal with that yourself. If it means holding a gun, that's one thing. But I don't believe, you brought up the point about control. It just really resonated with me, and I had conversations with it since then, since this last week about, what does it mean to be free? If you don't feel imprisoned by carrying a gun, good for you. I would. I would feel like my life is governed by who I can protect, being protection. That idea of protection really bothers me because then that implies that I'm vulnerable or some way that I'm leaving myself open. And I don't feel that way. I feel I can walk down the street and be free until the moment that I die.
Can I make a comment? I think though, I hear what you're saying, but I think maybe you're stating it a little too simply. That's fine. If you want to carry a gun, it makes you feel safe. I'm not okay with that, right? If you want to carry a gun, fine, but it has to be secure. I'm hoping that you're responsible with it. I think that there's more issues than just you guys are not, you would pass background checks, you can carry a gun. That's still not good enough for me, right? Because I fear not only for my life, but I fear for my kids' lives.
And I fear that my kids are going to go over to somebody else's house with no education and start playing and blow their head off, like happened to me in school growing up, where they were playing Russian roulette with a gun. The whole subject is messy. As parents, we could sit back and say, I'm fearful for my kids, and I'm fearful for my kids, and it's really a real subject that when there's guns involved, people can get hurt. It's just, if you take a look at how many kids are getting hurt nowadays compared to the 1800s when the rifle was above the fireplace or above the door or leaning up behind the door, kids didn't bring the guns into the schoolroom and shoot their teachers. Why? What's different nowadays? And so
there's a lot of things different. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we can make conclusions.
I don't know.
Society as a whole has changed. I would not be offended if you walked into my house and asked me if there was a
Yeah,
gun.
I've had people who
I wouldn't be
who
offended
have
at all.
guns who
But you mentioned education back along, and that's one of the things in a quick short story. I had the privilege of speaking to some 7th grade students at Lyseth Moore Middle School here in Portland. I could tell by the way the conversation was going who had fired a gun and who had not. Finally, I said, which one of you has actually fired a gun? One of the boys says, I have. I go to summer camp down in Berwick area every summer, and we have a shooting course, a shooting class, and we go to the range and we learn how, and I've fired 22s many times. The other thing, one of the boys, after I got all done, the child who asked the most questions, he said to me, I says, what did the other two, now that you're done with my interview, what did the other two say? He said, one of the lady who came in, Moms Against Guns group, or whatever the proper name is, she said the biggest problem we have with firearms is we don't educate our children at your age level. And I said, boy, I don't know who this lady is, but I like that. Because it's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Let me just say this. What you both said about public education of children, of safety, I 100% agree. And many countries require that. That's part of getting a gun. You have to pass this educational course. It's like getting a driver's license. You have to take a test and so on. So I totally agree with that.
I grew up, my father, U.S. Navy, World War II, we didn't have a gun in the house until he bought me one for my 12th birthday. He was not a shooter, he wasn't a hunter, but he knew that he wanted me to learn. I'm in the process of teaching my granddaughter how to shoot. And I don't care if she ever shoots again, but I don't want her to be afraid. I don't want her to go down that road afraid.
And
Okay, yeah.
I want to make a comment. I don't know that it's always out of fear that people act this way.
What's the other one?
I get a sense that there's maybe it's fear, but it's fear of you're going to take away my rights, right? So it's not so much about I'm afraid I need this gun for protection. It's more I'm allowed to have this gun, and you're not going to tell me that I'm not going to have it. I get a very icky feeling from the NRA, right? They come off as very abrasive and very like, these are our rights as Americans, and it doesn't matter what happens. It's more about just the right. So I guess it's a fear of losing rights, but it's not so much a fear of personal protection. I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but I get that sense, right? That it's more about, I have the right to carry a gun, and you're not going to impose any restrictions on that.
Owning guns is a matter of choice, and I respect anybody who doesn't want to own them. But I also say, if I want to have them, it's my right. And I will say it's a right. It's written in the Constitution, and you mentioned the U.S. Constitution, but it's also in the Maine Constitution. And Maine doesn't even mention militia. It just says clearly you have a right to keep and bear arms. Because I know the laws of all 50 states.
Interesting. It actually has this very interesting conversation from somebody like me, just sitting on the sidelines. No, really is. A really very interesting conversation. Pretty cool. The big thing to notice is the response. As long as it's legal underneath all the laws that are around, is your response. It's whatever it is. And we have choices about what our responses are after you notice the fears.
Do I have a solution for the gun situation? Yeah, I do. Leave it alone. I think a lot of it, and I was talking with some after the filming was done, a lot of it is not necessarily point of view. We mentioned many times education in this whole scenario, and they just don't understand. You don't have to be a gun owner, just understand that people are not all bad. You can't penalize society for something that 99% of the people are good at.
One thing that I heard today that was really illuminating for me, and I think is an important point for people who want to have guns, is this idea of education. I do agree, and that I haven't thought about it before, but the people who want to carry guns, who don't want to have gun control, or don't want to have as much gun control, is the idea of maybe just having some basic thing in the system that educates people about guns, so that people who use guns or are afraid of guns, as I have been, know more about it, know what to expect, know what people who carry guns have to learn before they get guns. All of that. I don't know any of that, and it helped me. I see that the people who do carry guns and believe in not having as much gun control as I'd like are reasonable people who have thought this out as well.
My opinions on guns haven't changed. I think that education's a big part of it, and I think everybody in the class could agree on that more education would be better for the whole situation.
You cannot exhibit fear, because if you exhibit fear and feel frightened and exhibit it, the aura emanates to those people that might hurt you. So So I used to be a community organizer for a number of years in Chicago and other places, and I learned that you relate to people as equals, no matter what station in life or no matter what nationality or education or people of color in general.
You know, they always say there's no perfect way to raise your child. I think there's no perfect way of living in whether you want to live or without a gun. You know, there's no right or wrong, I guess.
I don't think my opinions regarding guns have changed, but I certainly appreciated listening to a couple of the folks in the group who were responsible gun owners, and I could respect what they were saying and be grateful that there were people like that out there.
Very rarely do I get the opportunity to have rational, facilitated conversations with people. I mean, it was really helpful to have Dr. Polk as like the facilitator, you know, where I tend to write off strong supporters of guns as just like this stereotypical, like, gun-toting, don't take my freedoms away America type group. I feel like this group here, they presented their case well and they were very respectful. So, yeah.
They were getting along really well. In the end, I swear, well, a lot of them seemed to have developed almost friendships, and I suspected some of them were on different sides of the of the argument, because we were just looking at it from what ends up being called verbal aikido. And verbal aikido is that ability to notice things coming in through your five senses. Then you have this emotional response, but you can hold that emotional response. And then aikido is the ability to take energy and direct it different ways. Verbal aikido is take the energy that's come into you and then choose how you want to direct it. Choose it, and so instead of a knee-jerk response, you give a thoughtful response. And that sort of adds it all together, so we have psychological flexibility. But given everybody's doing that, now everybody feels safe. Everybody in the room felt very safe. Nobody thought they were going to be attacked. Sort of the definition of psychological insecurity or lack of safety is you're afraid to speak up because you're going to get attacked for speaking up. Where the definition of psychological safety is essentially, I can speak up in a group and I'm not afraid of somebody attacking me. They may disagree with me, but they're not going to attack me. And so it's safe for people to disagree. And that's what we ended up with in the room, was a place where it was safe for people to disagree.
We're all saying the same thing, it just comes out a little different. We're all feeling the same way, it just sounds a little different. We all want some peace of mind, it just comes out a little different. I want more time, I want more money, I want someone to call me home.
Can't wait to see you.
I want more space, I want more freedom. If there's a God, I'd like to meet him. 'Cause I got questions.
Okay, ready?
We're all saying the same thing, it just comes out.
They see the cameras and they're walking into the shot.
We're all feeling the same way, it just sounds a little different. We all want some peace of mind, it just comes out a little different. No need to worry about what I'm thinking when you're talking, I'm just listening. Life's not some pie we're fighting over till we're resting 'neath the clover. Yeah, it just grows, it just grows. We're all saying the same thing, it just comes out a little different. We're all feeling the same way, it just sounds a little different. We all want some peace of mind.